Hello and welcome. Thank you all for being here. My name is Scott Heckes. I'm a board member for the Kingsley Art Club and Education Foundation. It's great to see all you've got some artists here hadn't seen for a while. Love to see everybody. Thank you. Thanks for coming out. Quick announcement before we get started. After today's presentation, there's a reception right across from the auditorium in the meeting center. And we'd like for you to all join us, give you an opportunity to talk with the artist. I want to thank Patty French, who's on the Kingsley board, for arranging for the reception. She takes care of all the receptions and hospitality, so we're really pleased about that. I also wanted to acknowledge some folks that I think often get missed, and that's the Crocker Art Museum staff and the support that they've given us with the Kingsley series over the years. And in particular, Javi Plasencia, who's the education director, and Houghton Kinsman, who's the adult program manager. And probably most importantly, our friend Logan Moisey up in the booth there, who takes care of the IT and AV. And he's been doing that for us for many seasons, and so we're really grateful for his support. And while not a member of the Crocker staff, certainly part of the Kingsley family, and that's Lawrence Campling, our videographer, who documents the entire series, and his work is available through the Kingsley website, so you can see all the speakers, both past and present. So let's get them all a hand, please. Appreciate it. It's my honor today to introduce our speaker, Marsha Schindler. Marsha is a ceramicist, an installation artist, a painter, and a teacher. She is best known for her large ceramic work and her installations. Her work is widely collected and exhibited, and her public commissions include Minerva, which is a mural at the California State Capitol that was championed by then First Lady Maria Shriver. Marsha's work has been exhibited in numerous galleries throughout California, including the Pence Gallery, Blue Line Arts, the Palo Alto Art Center, the Museum of Northern California Art, and the Epperson Gallery in Crockett. Marsha holds a MA in design from the California State University Long Beach and a BA from Cal Poly Pomona in biology, and both those areas inform her work. So please help me welcome today's speaker, Marsha Schindler.
Thank you. Hello? Can you hear me? I'm on a mic here. Oh, there we go. There we go. I'm gonna have to do this. Before I start, I definitely want to thank the Crocker Kingsley Art Club for inviting me to do this presentation. I've taught quite a bit and I'm pretty comfortable with people, but when you have to start talking about yourself, it's a bit of a new spin for me. Oh, and there's my mom coming now. Yay, she made it. So I also want to thank all of you for coming today to listen to my presentation. So thank you. When I come to this stage, I bring all my ancestors with me. So they're all around me up here on the stage, and they support me every day. So I'm going to go ahead and start the slideshow. This one? Yes. 98. 98 years old today. So Living Threads, a journey of curiosity and adventure. So I'm talking about my ancestors, and these are part of my people. On the far left, oh, I do have a pointer. Over here is my father's mother, Maria Gonzalez, and they came from Mexico. And I didn't really get to meet all these people, but there they are. And they're also right here with me as well. Let me go back. My father was Bernard Schindler. He was of European descent, and he was in Minnesota working in the mines as an engineer. And he was taken to Mexico to work, where he then met my grandmother. I never got to meet him. He died of coal miner's lung, right, Mom? Yeah, he died of coal miner's lung, so I didn't get a chance to get to know him. But they met and had 4 children, lost one, and immigrated to the United States. And we are all immigrants on some level. And so that migration journey still follows me. My mother, on the far left over here, there's my mom. And these are also my ancestors that are up here with me. I never got to really meet my grandmother, Vicenta, because she had passed when I was probably about 1. But there were 7 daughters, 6 brothers, big family that began in Mexico, and then they also immigrated to Arizona and then ended up in Los Angeles. So in Los Angeles, my grandfather, my grandmother met. I'm sorry, my mother and my father met and started a family. I absolutely adore this image, so I had to put it in. This is my mom in the front. It's very blurry. That is with 4 of her sisters, probably the twins, and they're on the beach. But I just look at her, proud, with her hands on her hips in that, denim jeans on the sand, and that's always with me. So I wanted to share that. And then there is our family. So this is my mom, my sister Lydia, who's here. Me as a little infant, my brother I don't know if you've ever been to, what was the park? Knott's Berry Farm in Southern California. So we grew up in Whittier in Southern California, and I spent my youth there. And so we went to this park quite often. This is a most recent photo. It's only a couple weeks old. And that's my mom and my sister Lydia, who I want to also thank because she takes such wonderful care of our mom. My mom was living with me for a while. Now she's living with Lydia. And family is just part of where I come from, and its importance has really informed me throughout my life. And then little Maisie, and of course, we had just taught her to wink. So she is giving it her all. So they are all here with me today. So I'm going to start talking a little bit about my childhood. Like you, I was born curious, adventurous, and very interested in discovering nature when given a chance. And I think we are all born with some of this to some degree, and how it's nurtured is really important. So in Whittier, in Southern California, we were kind of like wild kids, My mom and dad both worked really hard. They were both blue-collar workers. We went to school, ran to school in the morning. We lived one house away. We'd run back. We'd play outdoors until it was time for dinner, and someone screamed out the screen door, "Get in here, it's time for dinner," right? That was our childhood, was playing. I was a super tomboy. So I was climbing trees and having orange fights, and one of the things we did was we camped. We camped every year, and there's my dad and I. We all had motorcycles. My dad built that dune buggy by hand. He was jack of all trades, master of none. Most projects got about 90% done in our house. We also went to swap meets. His religion was the swap meet every Sunday, so we'd go and we would treasure hunt. So we were treasure hunters wherever we went. And we also went to the beach. My mom would load up the station wagon and take us to the beach every summer in Southern California. So we had a really great childhood in that sense. But one of the things I remember was we had pets. We had every kind of pet you could think of, inside the house, outside the house. We had big dogs like Doberman Pinschers. We had small dogs. Lydia, my sister, had a little brown Chihuahua. We had cats. We had cats being born, kittens being born. Lydia had birds. Wayne had snakes. You know, it was full. I had a chicken. I was trying to raise a chicken under a cardboard box. We even had a tarantula. My father somehow got a tarantula, and we'd walk the tarantula. And he'd have me put my hand in there, and I didn't like spiders. And I would do this, and he'd say, "Don't worry, they'll only bite you if you're scared." That was his sense of humor. So, but we were filled with animals, and I think the importance of that is it really taught me how to be responsible for animals, how to pay attention to the fact that they were so different and they had different personalities. It also taught me about life and death, because you lose animals as well, and life goes on. And it was something that I connected to very dearly. A quick story about butterflies, for example. I'd be outside playing by myself, and I recognized that I could get a butterfly to just come onto my hand. And slowly, it started to trust me, and I'd walk around for hours talking to the butterfly, giving it a name, really original, like Buttercup. And what I noticed is, when another butterfly came into the yard, the butterfly would take off and chase him. So I kind of honed in on that, and I would take him and go get him, you know, and I'd have this whole relationship for 5-6 days with the butterfly, and they would follow me. I realized that we are so connected to other, right? If we have the opportunity to do so. So that really was important, I think, in who I became. Before I go here, let me just talk about having all those animals. So as I grew up, I, at 14, did volunteer work at a huge emergency hospital for animals, the Washington Boulevard Animal Hospital. And I'd bicycle there, and I'd clean the runs, I'd clean the kennels, but I kept showing up, and they kept giving me more to do. Eventually, I was taking X-rays, which I shouldn't have been, but I was. I was prepping into surgery and helping doctors undo the packs. I helped through C-sections. Eventually, believe it or not, I was monitoring calls on the emergency line all night to see if I should call the doctor who didn't really want to come in at 3 in the morning. So I really understood, I think by doing that apprenticeship, I really understood what being a veterinarian was going to be like. And so I went to Cal Poly Pomona, determined to become a vet. And what I recognized once I got there was there were so many other ways to be a biologist or a scientist, or, you know, be in relationship with the natural world. And the less I wanted to be in a hospital and seeing, you know, ears getting cropped and C-sections, and a very, you know, pretty methodical way of being. And so I took every ology I could take. I took biology, microbiology, zoology, anthropology, entomology, ecology, I was like a kid in a candy shop. I had no sense that I would actually have to graduate at some point and make money. But I loved it. It was something that I just soaked up. And I wasn't a great student. I was young, so I was also, you know, hanging out in the beer bar. So, you know, it was such an opportunity to be present for that education. What happened is I left the world of veterinarian ideas and I fell into marine biology. There was a dynamic instructor, and he was new to the school, and there was a group of us that just followed him. So I was scuba diving quite a bit. I became really proficient as a scuba diver. I think part of that confidence of being in nature, camping, being on my own, knowing that I had to navigate for myself, being even a tomboy was helpful. And I was able to really enjoy this new world. So the ocean it's an amazing thing that we don't see when you're just at the top, but also having the information of what was in the ocean was really great. So I could recognize ecology, I could recognize things that were doing something because I had learned about them. So, and then that's river rafting, the Grand Canyon. I also jumped off cliffs. I also parasailed. I always just kind of said, well, let me try it. I was a little bit fearless, but not crazy fearless, because I wanted to live. So after, let me see what the next one is. So after I graduated with a degree as a microbiologist, I had to work. And I was still in Southern California, and I went down to the Cabrillo Marine Aquaria, which was a beautiful aquaria, and I worked as a marine biologist. This was still a man's world. I was in my early 20s, and so when they hired me as an aquarist, they said, well, you know, you can clean the fridge, do water filtration, you know, don't hurt yourself. And I'm like, oh, hell no. I want to be on the boat, I want to collect specimens, I want to work on tanks, I want to do all the things. And I muscled my way into doing that. And I got to do the collections, I got to really, I could walk to work, I was living by the ocean, and it was really a wonderful experience. I got minimum wage, which wasn't much. So I was also working on the weekends at a, cantina. I was also, which to my benefit, was teaching on these 45-foot fishing vessels. So the Sea Afloat program was through the LA Unified School District, and these kids from the inner city would come to the Pacific Ocean. They would come to San Pedro, where I lived, and we would pack them onto these boats, and we would take them into the harbor. And each boat had a naturalist, and so I was one of them. And we do a 3-hour tour, right? The Gilligan thing. And we would take them into the harbor, and I would either do a dive and come up, or we'd do a trawl, and I'd have them all bring things up. We had a tank on the boat, and it was so educational. Some of these kids had never been to the beach. And man, to get out of that harbor and hit the waves and see whales, it was just an amazing experience. So I was doing that, and I even worked at a waste treatment plant. That was a crappy kind of job. But I worked in the marine lab just sorting samples. So I was doing all these things, still didn't have health insurance at the time, but I was loving life. So what happened when I worked at Cabrillo was there was a woman, Evie Templeton, and she was the interpretive designer. She did the murals, she did the dioramas, she did all the visual information that made that place alive. And that actually was, the architect who built that was Frank Gehry, actually. He designed the museum. And I thought, man, I want to be her. She was a redhead with a cane, and she swore like a sailor, just my kind of gal. And but she got to work with the Educational Resource Center. She got to work with the aquarist. She got to design something. And what captivated me was that this was art in service. This was making something visual that people could come into, kids could come into, and get a real sense of the environment and the ecology that they were looking at. And that grabbed me. Let's see. So after that, I went back to school at Long Beach State, and I got a master's in art. And I wanted to be a scientific illustrator, and I wanted to do what she did. And so I went through the school, and bless their hearts, I was a biologist. And I went right into the head department of illustration. And I had 2 little drawings, and I said, I want to get into the master's program. And he laughed and he looked at these drawings, but I was really, really dedicated to doing this, and I think that came through. And he said, okay. And he walked me down to the registration. He said, first you have to learn something about art. So I had to take art history courses and, anatomy for artists and painting and drawing and all these pretty intense classes. And my life started to shift because illustration was just a small part. The bigger part was this beautiful world of art, and the people that I met and the young artists that I met were so encouraging. And after about a year plus, I got into the program and I created a show for my master's. I had to do a thesis. And the bachelor degree is a broad, shallow pool of learning. And the master's program is a deep dive down into really coming up with something that inspires you, that's original. You have to write a paper. And so my end-up show was called Parturient, being in labor, able to produce an idea. The desire to bring forth something is what that word means. And you can see that it's still influenced by the ocean. We are about 72% water in our bodies. The oceans cover about 72% of the world. Our tears are the same salinity as the ocean. And when you are pregnant, that young developing fetus is basically in an ocean environment inside of you. Hence the pearl. I was actually 9 months pregnant when I graduated from this show. So it was very relevant to where I was at. And after that, I had my baby, and within 6 months, I moved with her father to Sacramento. So it's been almost 33 years. There she is as a young girl in Old Sac. Her name is Nola Pilar. She couldn't be here today, but I'm really proud of her. So here I am in Sacramento. No people that I know. My art people are gone. My family's far away. I have a 6-month-old infant, and I'm completely lost. I'm a mom, and I get to be a mom. I didn't have to go to work, but I'm kind of lost. So what do? I go to every, museum. I go to every, natural park. I take her to the river. We go see the cranes. We go to the Nimbus fish hatchery to see the fish. It was a time for me to take a break and be a mom, but I was a little worried because my identity post-graduate was gone. And so I sat at the window one day while she was sleeping, and I thought, can I still paint? And there's a little dead moth on my windowsill. And I put it on my desk, and I was so lovingly painting this little tiny dead moth. And I thought, I still can paint. I still can reach that part of whom I was. And so I didn't know what to do, and I marched over to Sac State, and I saw Gary Pruner. And I walked up to him, and I showed him my work, and I said, God, Mr. Pruner, I need a place to be. I need to start, developing a community, and I'm all alone. And he said, you can go up to the loft and paint, right above his class. Doors have always opened for me, but you know what you got to do? You got to knock, right? And surprisingly, people can be very generous. So I took the hugest canvas I could build. This is a terrible slide, I'm sorry. But I painted these salmon, and they were migrating, right? Because they are migratory fish. They go out to the ocean, and then they come back. And so I was working with Fish and Game. They actually got me fish samples that they had in their ice locker that were poached and tagged. And they said, and I would literally draw them and paint them. And, the science person in me was excited. But also the story, right, was still important. I had migrated. I had been moving. And I think it's such a common theme I see even in my work. So that happened. And then I also started to go to all the nature centers. and say, I will work for whatever you can pay me. Let me start doing some illustration work for your exhibits. And I worked at the FEA Nature Center. I ended up working at the Cosumnes River Reserve. I worked for Fish and Game. I actually ended up on the board of the Sandhill Crane Festival, and we put together the very first Sandhill Crane Festival. I did their letterhead. I had an art show pop up in downtown. Remember Phantom Galleries off of Del Paso? So I knew about that, and I said, well, let's talk to one of the commercial buildings that's vacant and have an art show, and we did. And we did all this stuff. I wasn't getting paid, but I wanted to do it, and I wanted to see if I could do it. This piece was a 6-panel exam. It was pretty big, a 6 huge panel folding piece that ended up traveling, and it was about the chronological change from wetland to gold rush and hydroblasting, and then farming, especially with tobacco, and then big agriculture, which all the panels aren't quite here. And it folded and traveled. And there's a little lift door. So again, the educational aspect of telling the story visually. This was in Coloma at the Marshall Gold Discovery Museum, and I actually got employed as a part-time interpretive specialist. We called it PISS. Part-time, no benefits. He said, the only benefits you get is counseling. I said, good, I'm gonna need it. I was pretty scrappy at that point for money, so I was doing multiple things. I actually was teaching at this time as well at Sac State for a program called Academic Talent Search, and I was teaching young kids, and I was doing scientific illustration with them. I discovered that they had a zoological or mammalogy museum in their bio building, and I took a peek, and it was all these taxidermed animals and specimens, and I said, can I have my class here? And I would sneak in and get some of the specimens and light them, and we were doing, life drawing of specimens with these kids and posters, and they did amazing work. So this was just a room, I think, with a carriage and some yen, and it was supposed to tell the gold rush story. And I got to work from the very beginning to the very end on this. We built the foam pieces, we put the decomposed granite, worked on it. This is Marshall Gold saying, what does he say about the discovery? Eureka, I found it, or something. But also the Native American story, which was simultaneously being incredibly impacted because of the rush of people to find gold, the destruction of the riverbeds and the salmon community, and even other diseases that were brought. So it was a really rich and full interpretive center, and I was really thankful to do that. So before I get to this, I wanted to make money somehow when I did have my daughter. And so I started to go to night school and figure out if I could be a computer illustrator so that I could do graphics and what have you. And I was lousy on the computer. But the instructor, Greg Skewis, who was teaching it, I showed him my little portfolio, and I said, I just need to work. And he said, I'm muraling, and I need help, and it was Christmas, and I'm doing Gold's Gym, can you help me? And I'm like, yes. And so I was just painting in shapes. I was just, paint by color. It was his design. But we really gelled. And so I started muraling with him as often as possible. And this might date me a bit, but at that point we had Rolodexes with contacts on them. You turn the Rolodex to get all the different names. He got a job working at Rayleigh's as their art director, and he was pretty burned out on murals, and he gave me his Rolodex and said, have at it. And I muraled for the next 13 years on top of, doing interpretive work and teaching. And it was a commercial job. Muraling sounds a little romantic. It was not romantic. I would be in a commercial dental office from, 7 at night to 2 or 3 in the morning working by myself, sometimes getting locked in or locked out. I did a lot of model homes. You know, the home making business was booming, and I might do 3 model home, I called them, you know, vignette murals. Surprisingly, well, actually unsurprisingly, I don't have a lot of photos of those. It was a job, but what it taught me was to be very fast, very resourceful, and also very confident, because I had to hit that wall, draw, paint, solve whatever it was my client needed me to solve, and be confident. And I learned color mixing as well. And I was just using quarts of house paint. It was a lot. I have some great stories, but maybe not enough time to tell you, because I also worked in memory care facilities. And this would be 100 feet with several rooms of people in very late stages of Alzheimer's or dementia. And it was, you know, both heartbreaking, but also I would get to know them. And I would go at night, and they don't always sleep at night because their clock is off. And you know, I'd come out with my cart. I couldn't leave my paints out there, but I'd come out with my cart, and you know, someone would come out and sit in a chair and come watch me. Or they'd come out and they'd go, "Hi, I'm Dale." And he'd be combing his hair and he'd say, "What's your name?" And then the next time I'd come, he'd say, "Hi, I'm Dale." But I just met some lovely people, and I was enriching their area by bringing murals, because they couldn't really put anything on the walls at that point. I digress. So anyway, I was getting really tired of muraling, but I was working with the Northern Services Interpretive Center, and they were working on the museum at 10th and O. At that time, I think it was the Women's History and Culture Museum. And we were working on the first San Simeon Hearst Castle exhibit. And so we were getting artifacts coming in, the furniture, the Baroque paintings, all the things that the Hearst Castle was known for. And they decided to paint all the walls in the castle brick pattern. I made, you know, big templates to do it. It was just killing me to get up on scaffolding and paint brick after brick, and I'm like, God damn it, I'm so tired of muraling. And but I went to the reception after. It was a daytime reception, and when I walked in, the curator and director said, "Wow, Maria Shriver really loves your castle bricks." And at that time, Arnold Schwarzenegger was our governor, Maria Shriver was our first lady. And I thought, okay, maybe I should meet this person. And I walk in and I see her, but she's surrounded by her guards. And there's an entourage waiting for photo ops with her. And so I'm waiting, and I can hardly get close to her. And then her guards will say, "Ms. Shriver, it's time to go." And I'm like, oh. So I grabbed her arm. All those guards were on me. I wasn't thinking in my right mind. I thought they were going to take me down to the ground. She turned and looked at me, and I said, "Maria," like I knew her. And I said, "I'm the muralist who did the castle bricks." She said, "Oh, I want a mural in my office. Come and see me." I said, "Okay." And I did, and I had my little portfolio, and I just remember coming to her office. It was in the horseshoe of the Capitol. And she was so busy. She had her hair pinned up with a pencil, and she had all these people waiting, but she came to see me. And her office was filled with beautiful paintings of California landscapes in golds and purples. And I looked around, and I picked up some stuff that she was working on, the Minerva Awards. I'm not sure if you know about those, but so she's buzzing around, and I said, "Let's go out of your office." And I come to the door, and I said, "Miss Shriver, when you open the door to your office, what do you want people to say and feel? And she said, wow. And I said, I can do wow. And you know, the truth is, it was carte blanche for me to figure out what to do for her. And so I did a little research, and I loved the idea of the Minerva. The Minerva was this, from Greek mythology, right? It was the Poseidon and the, what was her name? Gosh, I'm blanking now. I have to look at my notes. But anyway, it was, Athena. And they were in competition to see who was the best protector of the city. And of course, Poseidon has arms and power and strength. But Athena wanted to plant olive trees and incorporate the people to create commerce and have olive oil and make jars and have imports and exports and grow as a city. And she won. And so the Minerva Awards represent the power of women, really. I mean, she's a protector with her hat on, and she's a peacemaker with it off. And I just loved that idea. So nobody else in the office knew what I was going to do. There was always guards when I was there. I thought they were taking care of me, but they weren't. They were making sure I didn't touch anything in the First Lady's office. But her door was the portal, and it wasn't an extravagant office. And this mural went all the way down with words. There's the olive branches. And afterwards, I just remember the staff saying, God, we thought it was such a great idea to make Minerva ethnic, to give her voice to the diversity of California. And I was like, oh yeah. I hadn't thought of that, but I painted what I knew, and there were my ancestors again all around me, coming with me into this project. And so I look at it now, and she, in our hometown, we'd call it a vata, right? She was a tough woman. So that's my Minerva story. And after that, I stopped muraling. It just didn't interest me. But this is an important image I did of my mom. And she was about 90 years old here. And actually, William Ishmael invited me to do a piece for the mayor's office. And this was in about 2016, I believe. And so I did a drawing of my mom as inspiration because at 90, she had decided to leave Whittier and come to Sacramento. At that time, my father's health was debilitating. He was getting abusive. It was getting so difficult to live with him. And so what courage it must have taken to say, I'm going to go. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to find joy. I'm going to be with my family. And we all, rallied behind her. And she came. And I get a little teared up just thinking about it because it was the best thing she could have done at the time. And I still now take care of that cat, Spikeroo, right? But the reason I'm also putting this in here is she's the one that introduced me to ceramics. So I'd been painting, I'd been muraling, I'd been doing exhibit work, I'd been drawing, I was teaching, and she had been taking, when she retired, ceramic classes at the community college, and the teacher fell in love with her, as most people do. And she ended up getting her kiln and her wheels and her glazes and her tools and everything. And she did it for a while in her backyard. Not the same. It's a lot of work. And you're also all by yourself. And she was getting a little arthritic, and she said, you want it? And I said, yeah. So I went there, got a U-Haul, brought it all back, and hadn't taken a clay class. So I went over to Cosumnes River, took a class, many classes actually, with Yoshio Taylor, who was my mentor, really, in developing an art practice. And so that started my journey in ceramics. Then Julia and I both went to the first reception opening at the Panama Pottery factory. This was a bona fide ceramic factory in over by Sac City Community College and Land Park, and it was really a magical place. Time had stopped there. And they had the big beehive kilns. This is actually, I taught there as well. So this is a class critique. This is part of my studio. And Julia and I both met there and we said, we got to be here. There was no question. And so we started to pay rent, and we had such a hard time paying the $500-600 a month split between us that we got a couple more people to join us. And it was really quite something. I taught classes there. There's Nancy. This is a mosaic class outside. My studio is back here. So there's a sliding door that opened into it. I also, wanting to create community, formed PAC, which was the Panama Artists Collective. At one point there was like probably 24, 25 artists. Is that right, Steve? Something like that. And we were just all kind of working, but I thought, what if we come together and, get a gallery going and have an event and teach classes and do tours? And we ended up doing that, and it was really a cool time to be making artwork. So there I am. This is a pretty packed studio. So I taught in my studio, and I also taught outside of it. Unfortunately, it was mismanaged at the end. And you have to be really mindful working in clay because of silica and because of clay dust and because of all the chemicals in the firing process. You really have to be present with what you're doing and mindful. And ultimately, it was not. At that point, I had met what became my husband at the time, and he started working, Jeffrey Grau started working in clay as well. And I said, well, if you want to see me, come, because I'm in the studio. And I taught him some things, and he still does clay today. And I'm very thankful for him, because what he did when we pulled out is he really supported me in finding a building, demoing it, and making it a studio that I could run. It's a small business, but we could have classes, we could have events, we could have rented spaces for other artists to come in and participate. There's an upstairs and there's a downstairs, and there was a little outdoor area. And it took us about a year to get it ready. It's kind of like if you build it, they will come. It really did quite happen, and it was a beautiful spot. In this moment, I no longer own the business. It was a lot to run, to fire work, to run classes, to run events. I wasn't getting much work done, and I'm skipping a little ahead, but I do want to thank Zachary Myers, who has taken over the business and is doing an amazing job expanding it. And he's young and has all the energy to do all these new things. But the interesting thing about this is I've come to this, and there's my ancestors again coming in. I was able to have a Dia de los Muertos, or a Day of the Dead, every October. We would communally build an altar. Also having that big window and being by McKinley Park, we always were displaying something in the window to let the community know we were there. Before I start my work, I always was fascinated as well with bones. Somehow, and there's a whole tale of La Huesera, the bone collector, and that you put the bones together and the animal fleshes out and is wild. And it always was in my mind that on some level, I think the spirit also resides in the bones. I collect them. My sister collects them. You can't open up her drawers without seeing skulls and bones and teeth. It's just something that is very attractive to me. And I see it show up in my work, This is also a Dia de los Muertos with the marigolds. And if we've been to Oaxaca during Dia de los Muertos and you see the painted faces, and that kind of stuck with me. At this point, my work was evolving. I was doing a lot of small figures. Natalie Nelson with the Pence Gallery gave me my first real solo show. And I did Floating on the Edge, mostly bathers, boats, some goats, some drawings. My work was evolving. And then in, 2019, Trump was elected, first term, is that about right? 2017, thank you. And things shifted because we knew that climate change was happening, and we knew that national parks were precious, and that our resources are limited, and that we have to steward, and have people really promoting that, and that was no longer happening, and it was heartbreaking for me. And my work started to reflect that. So I did a whole series called Angry Series. And it was sparked by the fact that I was listening to the news, and they were opening up hunting bear in their dens in the winter. And it was like a gut punch to me that just was wrong on all levels. And so I did actually do a figure holding a cub. She had a target on her back, and her fingers looked like a gun. And I was just working that stuff out. And I got tired of being so angry. I think the last piece was a superhero woman with a red cape, because really it was about taking action. And what I discovered is that my artwork was really always a narrative. It was like the exhibits. It was a visual way of telling stories that I felt needed to be told. And then COVID hit, right around 2019. And I did this piece. It's a little more severe. She had people inside of her that were waiting. There was a sense of waiting. But I have to say, it was probably one of the most fertile and prolific times for making clay, because I didn't have events, I didn't have to teach, I didn't go anywhere, and my studio was fairly empty. So I started working on this body of tree women, because I was reading these books like The Hidden Life of Trees, and Overstory, and Braiding Sweetgrass, and all these books that started to show me how connected we are to everything. And that became this really prominent theme for me. And so these tree figures, to not see trees as objects that we can use as a resource, but as a subject, I was putting it together with the human figure, because we can relate to looking into a human being's face. So these trees began to multiply. I remember Julia saying, "I see a forest." And I said, "I do too." And so there was going to be a show over in Contra Costa at the Epperson Gallery, and it just got shut down with COVID, and they waited. I actually had them looking out the window, and I'd see people looking back at them. And they were waiting for something to happen. And then it happened, right? In 2022, Sacramento hosted NCECA, which is the National Council of Education for the Ceramic Arts. It's a national annual show. And Sacramento had put in a proposal, I believe Anthony Mackie-Gill and a couple other key people, and they accepted it. The theme was fertile ground. I mean, that's right up my alley. And I had these tree women, and Natalie graciously invited me to have a solo show during the Ceramic Week convention, which was a huge honor. And so I worked away. I had lots of tree women connecting. I had animals. I had snakes. In the background, you can see these threads. Those represented the mycorrhizal threads, or the mycelium of fungi, which in my reading is understory. It's there. It connects everything. It connects messages. It connects nutrients. They will feed the mother tree even if the mother tree is dead. Just all of these things started clicking for me. And so my art became really about that. I even had a full-sized bear head coming out of the wall. The body was horrendous. I cut off it, put the head on, and then I decided, well, it still needs a body. So I started to draw the body and the bones, and I love that idea even better. So I still play with that in my art, the idea of something coming from a two-dimensional into a three-dimensional. These are some close-ups of the tree women. I still loved adornment. I think that we have always been adorning ourselves like those beautiful male birds that are full of colorful foliage. So they had scarification, they had tattooing, and they felt pretty ancestral. I even included the butterfly of my youth, the butterfly tree. But this piece was about metamorphosis and change. So we have the caterpillars crawling up her tree, and then she is actually holding the chrysalis. And there it is, parturience, the possibility of life birthing. And then above her were these butterflies that then turned into these blue leaves. And so I was really exploring these ideas, and they resonated with me. Going back to ocean, right? Sea lions coming through. That really isn't finished. It needs to be painted with blue as in greens behind it. Migratory birds have always been something near and dear to me. So I was abstracting them with sumi ink and charcoal. And then the Blue Line offered me a residency, thank you. The Susan Cooley Gilliam residency was the first one I ever had. And my work shifted a little bit there, but I thought, well, let me make this place into an installation. And I immediately played with hanging birds and paintings and pieces. I taught a class or two there. I was also playing with this idea of the bones and the shovels and working the earth, and immigrants that come across our border and do the gardening and do the work. And so that is on the back burner of a project I still want to get to. And my lovely dogs, Sunday, who is no longer with us, but she's there forever in this picture. And so my work is still very figurative. This piece on the right, I don't look at objects when I'm making them, but man, that looks like an ancestor to me. I see the Godoy right there from my mom, the green eyes, the big wide nose, and the bones. Again, she's pretty powerful. And then, water, scarcity and too much. So here's a topographic image of a goat on a very parched, dry clay surface. This is a figure where the waters are rising and the birds are there. And those marks are the time, the days that are going by while things are still melting. So when I'm making these, I don't even know how conscious I am of them. But that's the direction I'm going in. And, artists make work for all kinds of reasons. There's all kinds of ways to be an artist in the world. But for me, I make art in service of voices that we don't understand the language of, in service of the birds and the trees and the water and the oceans. All those things truly drive me to make. And on my best day, I am only a conduit. So the clay and I have a relationship, and I'm not always even sure what's going to happen. And if I can get out of my own way and make something, it feels like it's being powered from something else, and that's an amazing feeling to have. So thank you for listening. Is that good, Kylie? Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So we have some time for some questions. We have a mic over here, so if you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand and we'll get the mic over to you. Anyone? Question? Pam? Right in the center there. Oh, okay. Press the button.
Oh, she's,
Oh, there
yep,
it is.
there
Yep,
it
it's
is.
working. Perfect. That was brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Thank you. Are your tree people anywhere to see now?
Yes, actually, I have a small installation at the Palo Alto Museum, which is connected to the Art Center. Palo Alto is a couple hours away. And that will be up until April. I'm in a current show that I was invited to called Clay Sustains, which is about sustainability. But I also have some at my studio. So at Clay Art Studio, I have some work there as well. All those works from that show at the Pence sold. I was very fortunate. Yeah, that's amazing. I walked in and saw a lot of red dots. I was like, okay, sit down. Yes, but right now they're all at the Palo Alto Museum.
Thank
yes.
you.
Julia has a question down here. Julia.
Great, Marsha. That
thank
was
you.
just great. This is not really a question, but I'm sure there are a number of people here today who would enjoy knowing about the next open house at 814.
Yes.
And we probably didn't bring a sign-up sheet, but I just would like people to know that the studio that Zach is now in charge of, they do several times a year invite the public in.
Yes.
And it's a small studio. Loads of people come. There's always good food and amazing work to look at.
Yeah, definitely.
So I encourage everyone to look for Clay Arts.
It's Clay Art Studio 814. Put a .com on that, and that takes you right to our website. I had forgotten to mention that we did have a huge exhibit there for 1 week during NCECA. Our studio was on the map, and so we had a big event where all the artists were participating. Yeah, MC Richards was shown with Anthony Mackie Gill in terms of Fertile Ground, and I was lucky to be invited to be on that planning committee for NCECA, so I made a lot of contacts, which was really wonderful. But our studio is very vibrant, and we're certainly open for SAC Open Studios in September, and probably we'll have some event in between that, and classes are ongoing all the time. So if you're ever interested in taking a class, just go to the website, or you can speak with, do you want to stand up, Zach, so they know you are who you are? Stand up, stand up. Yes, yes, because it's still, he does slip casting now and lots of different opportunities for classes. So thank you, Julia, yeah.
I love, oh, I have the mic.
Yep, please.
I'm sorry. I love your fascination with animals and your ceramics.
Yes.
So which animals are intriguing you most now? What do you see yourself moving forward with in terms of ceramics and animals?
You know, I've been getting stimulated by these big freeway overpasses they're building that allow for migration to happen so that the freeways aren't killing and stopping these animals, because we migrate, right? Animals might, not all, but animals are always moving and migrating. We as people do, and so these borders basically that keep us from doing that. So I'm interested in some of those animals that do migrate and how I might bring that consciousness where it can make some sense. That's one of the things I'm interested in. I love everything, really. I love all the animals. So,
But that's excellent, a really important cause.
yeah, I like that idea.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question right in the back, Pam.
I'm a follower, and I have to say it. I've taken classes from Marsha over the past 20 years, maybe, on and off. I live on an acre on the river. My yard is full of the work I did with Marsha.
Oh.
And my house, I have a tree, lady, and I have a dachshund on its back. But I don't know, are there any other students of Marsha's here? So you know what I'm talking about.
Thank you. Thank you.
I revere her. She is the kindest soul, one of the kindest souls I've ever met, and she is so talented. She has been a spectacular teacher. Thank you, Marsha.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful way to end this. Beautiful way. Thank you. Thank you all. So please join us across the lobby. Oh, we have one more. Oh,
That's
Marsha's
my
sister. She gets
sister.
the last question.
I also did not mention, but wanted to, I do have a half-sister as well that didn't come into our lives until I was in high school, Maria Alicia. So I'm giving a shout out to my beautiful sister, Maria Alicia, who lives in Southern California.
I just want to say that I'm just so proud of my sister.
You make me
and,
cry.
And having seen her go through her journey, what I've seen is that it's about feeling passionate and being always happy with what she does. And that's brought her success. And to see her come this far is just so beautiful. And I like, we both have very much been interested in animals. And I just love how she continues to evolve with our animal people that are so part of us. And the corridor ideas are wonderful. Migration is so important because we all do that. And as humans, we've really destroyed a lot of ability for animals to migrate. And that is one of the biggest reasons that we're having such a decrease of our animal people. So for Marsha, how she so beautifully expresses this, I know that that idea, and I'm sure you've had it, is such a good one. I love you.
I love you too. Okay.
Thank you all. Please join us across the hallway.